Welcome to the 100 Club. I'm Tom, and I'm joined by Rich and Oli, and it's time to review the tournament. The finals have been completed, the trophies have been handed out, but what did we make of it all? Find out now. Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome back. Oli, how are you doing? How is your young daughter coping with being the BBC face of the finals?
Yeah, she seems to be the poster girl of the 100. Much to the annoyance of my elder daughter.
Well, for those who won't understand what that means, I should just explain that a picture of your daughter is being widely used in the press releases for all sorts of things on the BBC right now.
Yeah, she's 2, and she was waving her arms around very enthusiastically at every boundary and every wicket. So she was hedging her bets as to who she was supporting. That's for sure. But, she was quite photogenic and a good poster child for the encouraging of new fans to the game. And at the minute she's everywhere.
Yeah, I was going to say, presumably to the annoyance of Alice Capsey as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can redress that balance today because we are going to talk about the cricket itself. And why don't we start, in fact, with that women's final? We were all there, clearly, and we can talk about that experience itself. But what were your impressions of the women's final, which ended up with, ultimately, the Oval Invincibles overcoming the Southern Brave? Rich, what was your opinion?
Well, it was a surprise, wasn't it? The Southern Brave had gone into the game having won 7 of 8 of their group games. Top of the pile. They had beaten the Invincibles fairly handily earlier that week. So I think most observers in the ground were expecting a relatively comfortable win, but it didn't turn out that way. Go on, Karen.
No, it's something I had to keep reminding myself. That these teams have played before. So it wasn't like there's a pyramid structure. And actually, I didn't find myself looking back to that form. But if I had, I'd have been even more surprised, perhaps.
Yeah, the Invincibles, I guess, had the advantage that they played the day before in a must-win game and took some of that form in. And I think the other thing they had going for them was that Marizanne Kapp had come back in after missing a few games through injury, and she was in fine form. Ended up with the best bowling figures of the tournament, taking 4 for 9.
Yeah, I think it's it really shouldn't be underestimated just how important Kapp is to that side. Not least of obviously bowling is was fantastic on the day, but also she got them to a point where the total looked defendable. But I kind of also think that when she's in the side, Van Niekerk bats better. I think something about just knowing that she's in, Kapp still to come in, just gives a little bit more freedom to Van Niekerk. Obviously, there's some other talented batters in that lineup as well. But for me, as you looked at the sort of the games through the tournament, it looked as if Van Niekerk just seemed to bat with a little bit more fluency when Kapp was also in the side. So, yeah, I think Kapp coming back in was really important for them, really important for the Invincibles.
I think they won it with the bat. If I was to be honest, I think the Oval Invincibles won that with the bat, with a set of figures, none of which were spectacular, 20s, 30s, but from 2 down to about 6, actually putting a decent total for them to defend. Sorry, Rich, go on.
I was going to say, let's give a shout out to the organisers at this point, because the conditions were tricky. It was a surprise they got started at 3 o'clock. We'd had a lot of rain around in the day, and there was quite a few short, sharp showers during the Southern Brave innings as well, where in normal cricket, I think we all agreed they probably would have gone off, but they played through it, which meant that the conditions were a little bit tricky to bat in for both sides. And I think we all thought once the Invincibles got up to above 110, I think they ended up with 115 in the end, that given the strength in their bowling, that they were well in the game.
Yeah, and I mean, you can give Kapp the nod for a great performance. It was Donovan Nikirk, I think, who took the Player of the Game award, and capping a fine tournament for her. Maybe we'll come back to her when we're talking about some of the performances overall. But one thing I didn't like was Kapp maybe bouncing out Lauren Bell with 40 required off 3 balls.
No, that for me was, I think we're going to do champagne moments a bit later, but for me that was one of the champagne moments, because I think if you had any doubt that women's cricket is fiercely competitive, and that I've talked kind of at length how I like some genuinely quick bowlers in, and one of the things I want from my quick bowlers is a bit of aggression. And so if you are, I think I said at the start of that set, I bet if she gets hit for 4, she's not going to be happy with this, even though it was 40 needed, wasn't it? With you've got the number 11 at the crease in what were some suspiciously clean-looking pads, I think, from Lauren. But I'm not sure how much batting she'd done in those pads. They look like they'd come straight out of the plastic wrappers and onto her legs.
Well, she hadn't batted. She hadn't batted in the tournament.
I don't think she'd done that much in the nets either, because they look shiny new, those pads. It's one through extra cover, I think it was. And I said Cap's not going to be happy with that. Next ball, chin music.
Yeah. Well, by that point, it was all over. It was all over by that point. And so a fine performance by the Oval Invincibles women. And I think, probably a shock result, we'd call that one. Would we call the men's result a similarly unexpected shock? Southern Brave clearly overcoming the Birmingham Phoenix. Ollie, what did you make of that one?
I don't think this was such a shock. I mean, I think we've known that the Birmingham Phoenix have looked really, really impressive with the bat in hand, but we've also known that the Southern Brave have been really good with the ball, and I think this was kind of one of those where was the best bowling attack going to win out over the best batting lineup, and it was kind of a bit of scoreboard pressure, sort of did for it. I think that was if they'd been batting the other way around, would the Phoenix have gone on and been able to put on a really imposing total? Well, maybe they would. Maybe they would have been able to bat the Brave out of the game, because I do think the Phoenix batting lineup kind of just had more power in it, but got to be able to deliver it under the pressure of a run chase, and just a couple of moments didn't go their way. We'll probably talk about the run out.
I suppose the surprise is the way the game was won, because you tend to think of the Southern Brave, restricting with the ball and then being very efficient with the bat. But actually, they posted a very competitive total on the back of Paul Sterling's 60 odd, and then Ross Whiteley at the end smashing 44 of 19, I think it was. Yeah. So the idea of them sort of putting up a big score and then defending it was a little bit different to how they got to the final. But perhaps not a surprise. Yeah,
and it felt like those runs at the end really took a decent total into one that sort of I think was going to be more than the Phoenix would have been comfortable chasing. Yeah, I think one sort of Sterling's effort sort of got them back, got them going again after a pretty sluggish start, and I think sort of got them into the game. But I think it was the Whiteley runs that sort of took it away from the Phoenix.
So I think they were both up at around 115 after 70 balls. So they were within 10 runs of each other for 3/4 of that innings. And most people are going to say the Livingston dismissal is the turning point. A terrible first run, and then just caught out completely with a great bit of fielding by Tim David. But ultimately, there could have been someone else who stuck their hand up from the Birmingham Phoenix just to get them over the line with big runs in the last 30 balls. It didn't happen because ultimately Tymmal Mills, Chris Jordan had plenty of balls left in the hand, as it were, and did the job.
Yeah, and I think that's it, right? Chris Benjamin, Benny Howell, have scored decent lower order runs, in a sort of earlier in the competition, and a decent strike rate, but they hadn't had to do it against Jordan and Mills, and I think that for me was the difference. That it was kind of still manageable when the middle order were batting, but the quality of the bowling, meant they couldn't get it back, couldn't accelerate again after losing Livingston.
I think it was the Livingston run out though that was the critical moment. He was really motoring at that point. I think he just hit I think it was 14 off the previous 3 balls, sort of survived a bit of a half chance. And then, you're right, it was good fielding, but I don't necessarily think Tim David is aiming for the stumps there. I think it's a bit of a...
Let's be clear. It's good fielding, but it was worse running.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And you make your own luck. And we saw that in the women's final as well, where, Sophia Dunkley went for was out cheaply, caught a second slip. But Van Niekerk had a second slip in, 2 slips. in the early stages of the game. So, but I think if Livingston bats another 15, 20 balls, then I think Phoenix win that game.
Quite possibly.
Well, I think they. I don't know whether they win it, but they give themselves a chance. It felt like after that they perhaps they thought that they'd all thought in the dressing room that exactly that. If we need Livingston to stick around for us to win this game, so when let's be honest, when he runs himself out, because if what do you teach kids when they're starting to play cricket and they're learning to run between the wickets? Don't just ball watch and run hard. And he was guilty of just flouncing around in the mid pitch, looking at whether the catch was going to be taken. So he runs himself out.
Yeah. Okay. So those games clearly well covered in much of the media as well. But we were there, and we had the privilege, myself and Rich as well, of being at the Eliminators Day, the previous day at the Oval, and that they were my first live in-person game experiences for myself. So I think that was an interesting take for me. So I'm interested in what you thought of the finals experience, but I might open it up in terms of I thought it was a good experience, and I thought the cricket on show was actually not perhaps some of the best games we've seen throughout the tournament. Certainly on the Eliminators Day, I don't think I've seen a worse game in the tournament than the men's eliminator. But actually, what we saw was everything that you've described to me in terms of the atmosphere, the crowd we saw there. I enjoyed the music act. I enjoyed the food and the way they handled everything. Was there anything for you to add in terms of what you saw over those 2 days?
Well,
I think it was very impressive on the final day that they started on time. I think it took everybody by surprise a little bit because certainly kind of anyone that's been to kind of any form of kind of international or sort of top level cricket, when it's been wet, you arrive for the start of the session and you expect to see like the umpires standing around, a bloke with a brush sweeping, and some groundsmen scratching their heads, and it's sort of, if it's wet, for some reason the start is inevitably delayed. So credit to the organisers for saying, well, it's been wet, but we're just going to get it on. Everyone's watching. Let's get on with it. And it wasn't the easiest conditions, I think, to play in, but they. The sort of big media spotlight was not, immediately shining upon, and
I think what it helped
outfield and some soppers.
What I think it helped though is the ECB releasing the press statement the day before, making it quite clear that they were going to make that game happen. And I think that probably put the imperative, as it were, in the groundsman's start in the heads. Rich, what do you think?
I thought it worked very well. I mean, I've seen a few people in the press saying that perhaps the finals should be split. The finals day itself shouldn't be a double header, but. I thought it worked incredibly well. We had a record crowd for a women's domestic match once again, the first ever domestic final to be played at Lord's. It was a very diverse crowd in. I've been going to Lord's for 30 years, and I don't think I've ever seen such a mixed crowd in. I think actually the music elements of it worked very well in terms of filling those sort of little gaps between the games, keeping everybody engaged. I think you can. And we'll talk into some of the issues around the tournament later. But in terms of the match day experience, I think you have to say that they've done a decent job. And even though the games of cricket weren't, close finishes, I think it's fair to say all 4 of them were sort of compelling games of cricket for one reason or another. Yeah,
good stuff on that. I'm downloading Jack Jones's complete back catalogue already, so that's worked for me. Okay, so. Decent in that sense, and the ticket sales figures are starting to come out now. 90% of all tickets across the tournament sold. Clearly not 90% attendance, and there's various reasons for that, COVID being the most obvious. And of those, 21% went to women, 20% to kids, so 40% women and children. That's an improvement, I think, in terms of the audience that are turning up there. And you just had to walk around, see the number of families, taking selfies or just saying how it was their first experience of cricket, or friends explaining to each other how the game was going to happen, like that. Okay, let's talk about some of the tournament highlights then, if we can. So let's start with, and I've been through the prediction show again. I'm not going to embarrass us and say what we said in that pile of predictions and optimism.
That was a total pile of predictions.
Yeah. Let's leave it at that. Okay, game of the tournament. Oli, give us your game of the tournament.
All right. Well, I mean,
you can give us a man's and a women's game.
Yeah, we should. I suppose I shouldn't talk about the predictions too much, but I did predict. I think that the Northern Superchargers might either be the best or possibly the worst team in the tournament. I think, to a certain extent, I was right in that at times they were, a bit shoddy.
Yeah, that solid mid-table performance proved that they were both the best and the worst.
Yeah, so in some games they
this isn't a Dickens novel.
Times you were screaming out to just accelerate, set a decent target here, and they just plodded along. But thankfully, they did save their best batting performance for the game. That really mattered. Really, if you're a Superchargers fan, because you questioned before the tournament. Do these newly formed teams, are they going to spark the imagination? Are these rivalries going to really exist? Well, Northern Superchargers versus Manchester Originals, it mattered. And what a game to then go on and pile on 200 runs. I think, what did your model say? It was less than 1% chance of someone getting to 200?
Less than 3%, Rich's model put at a 200 score.
Wow.
Yeah. And no one else really got that close. No. I mean, the second highest was 180 odd. Yeah, no one else got into the 190s.
Cool.
So, yeah.
All right.
It felt like a derby game. And some comedy fielding as well to help it along.
Horrible fielding.
Let's not be pulling any punches there.
Yeah.
But very entertaining as a Superchargers fan.
Yeah, slightly biased perhaps. Go on, Rich. Your best men's game.
Again, Superchargers involved, and relatively early on in the tournament, it was the Superchargers Rockets game where the Rockets snuck home by 2 wickets. A very strange game where I think the Superchargers had got 134, I think it was. Simpson top scored with 42, and then the Rockets kept losing wickets the whole way through. But strangely enough, Alex Hales was still there, even though he was sort of scratching along and struggling to score at run a ball. And then, if you recall, with about 20 balls to go, a streaker runs onto the field. Ben Stokes, as Superchargers captain, complains and says the ball must be replayed. Off the replayed ball is a dropped catch by Ben Stokes.
Catch, yeah,
exactly. And then Matt Carter at number 10 hits 13 off 8 balls, and Hales finally sort of finds the middle of his bat, and they sneak home by 2 wickets. I mean, that was a compelling game.
Yeah.
My women's one is an interesting one in that it was a close game, but it was not necessarily the best match of the tournament. I accept that, but it was the Spirit beating the Superchargers at Lords, because during that run chase, which they ultimately got home by 2 balls to spare when Deandra Dottin made 50 not out, I found myself, this new team that I was watching in the stadium for only the second time, that I, on this podcast said, these are going to be my team. I was genuinely sat there invested in them winning. And when they got over the line, it was a genuine punch in the air moment that was their first win at Lords. They'd won their first game away at Edgbaston. But that was it. That was like, yes, I have an empathy with this team. These are, I really like this group of cricketers. And it was an interesting moment for me.
Having spent 3 days with you recently, you haven't taken that hat off. So, that's it now. Your London Spirit tattoo and all of that can get done. I'm similar to you in that I'm not a stats guy. I'm not. I'm a blood and guts, emotions and storylines kind of sports person. So I think I've gone for the ones that sort of made me think this is really good cricket. I've got an ebb and a flow and a storyline to it. Actually, so for the women's game, I've gone for the very first game, the Manchester Originals versus the Oval Invincibles, the whole razzmatazz of that, the starry-eyed players coming out, the nerves and all of that, and just the fact that this tournament that we don't know anything about just comes on the scene and actually looks like it might be something really important for cricket, if certainly women's cricket, if not men's cricket as well. And then actually I went for the last game of the group stages as my men's game of the tournament, London Spirit Welsh Fire, a dead rubber. You'd think nothing to it at all in terms of glory, but actually they play their hearts out, those teams. And it's a really good quality game when the Welsh Fire you think are absolutely going to be dead and buried. Glenn Phillips comes in. It's a magnificent 80. And Kais Ahmed carves up a few boundaries at the end to get them across the line. And again, it's the fist-punching moment for me, and that's what I want to see. And I think you'll see that in most of my sort of tournament review questions. I want a bit of emotion. Go on, Ollie. I think we need your women's game with the tournament.
Well, I was just going to say I completely agree about that opening game. In the women's side, not least because I think it was quite important sort of for the format because it was able to ebb and flow that game. And in that run chase, it looked like the Invincibles were out of it, and it kind of
took down to about 7% on win.
Yeah, it took it, and it felt like that as well. But then it was just calm head. Van Nierkerk steadies the ship. It doesn't go crazy, but just starts to accelerate, and you then you realised, okay, this format's going to work. It's going to be able to ebb and flow. You can lose a few wickets and get back into it. So I think that was an important game for the just to convince everybody that format was good. My game, I think I'd call out on the women's side though is the Southern Brave versus the Birmingham Phoenix game. So I think it was probably the highest run chase on the women's side. Phoenix make 140, and kind of everybody in the top order gets a pretty reasonable looking score. Verma gets quite a few at a runner ball. Both Joneses make runs again over a runner ball. Katie Mack gets quite a lot. I think almost going to a ball. So it looked like that score was going to take some getting, and then the fact that the Brave chase it down, with only 2 down, kind of for me sort of set the tone for quite a lot of the women's tournament. It sort of said, okay, they almost whatever you get, the Brave have got the batting lineup to chase it down, and so I suppose that's what made the final such a surprise when they didn't. Melted like a pack of soggy pom bears.
Yes, how apt. You've mentioned Dani van Niekerk. We've all mentioned her a fair bit. She has been crowned the MVP of the tournament on the women's side, and Liam Livingston has picked it up, I think, on the men's side as well. But I want to know who you want to crown as your players of the tournament as well. So, Rich, do you agree with the stats, or are you going to go with something else?
No, I think it's fair, who've been called out on that side. But I think it's more interesting to maybe look at it from a slightly different angle. And I think when we reviewed the Oval at the beginning, we said that they're going to be very, very dependent on their South African core. Who's going to step up to support that? And I think the revelation of the tournament has been 17-year-old Alice Capsey, who celebrated her birthday during the tournament. Both with bat and ball. I mean, she sort of had 150 runs in the tournament, including that sort of half century against the Spirit at Lords, but also a very important 18 off 12 in the final that really put some impetus into that innings and got them up above 115. But also then it comes down to sort of her her bowling, which was pretty crucial as well. She was bowling off spinning in important moments. She was 4th overall in terms of economy, only 4.32. And when you consider bowlers who bowled more than 100 balls in the tournament, she's actually second. So second most economical bowler, and also scored 150 runs with a bat. 10 wickets contributed as well there. And I just thought sort of her tournament boiled down to a moment in the eliminator when the Birmingham Phoenix still needed 30 off 20, which is perfectly kind of gettable scenario. You got to bat well, but doable. She bowls 10 balls in a row and she only gives up 7. Plus she gets Georgia Elvis, England international, out caught and bowled with a great catch. And then suddenly they've lost their last remaining batter. They need 23 off 10, game over. So not just the stats, she put her hand up and took the ball in critical situations. So that's why I thought she was one of the players of the tournament for me.
Incredibly consistent for such a young player, and surely such a bright future ahead of her. Go on and give us your men's player of the tournament whilst you're there as well, Rich. Go on.
I'll give you one. Yeah, a lot of focus on the batting, big hitting, but for me, Adam Mill was the guy. Leading wicket taker and leading economy rate. 4.78. Fantastic in the final. You could say his teammates let him down. He had 20 balls for 8 runs with 2 wickets, including the big one of Quinton de Kock.
2 incredible spells.
Yeah. I think he's been fantastic throughout, and the fact he's only a reserve for the Kiwis T20 squad, either means they've got some pretty good players ahead of him, or maybe they need to think their selection a little bit ahead. But
okay.
I thought Milne was fantastic throughout.
So you've picked the number 2 on the MVP for the men and the number 3 on the statistical MVP chart for the women. So nothing too controversial, though, overall, really, there. I'll take it, though. They're good picks. You've justified it. Ollie, who have you got?
So I think on the women's side, I'm gonna go for Jemima Rodriguez. Just I know they didn't get into the latter stages of the competition, but if you think back to the sort of the first few games and almost to the couple of weeks before the tournament started, we'd done our preview shows and we talked about all these great names that were coming over. Particularly we called out quite a few Australians that we're looking forward to seeing. And they didn't make it, and so I guess there was this question mark about actually has the tournament lost something in terms of the overseas stars. Then she goes out and starts scoring runs for fun. She's still, I think she still ended up with the top scorer in the tournament, didn't she, with her 92. So I think
Livingston.
Yeah. So top scorer in the tournament. Full stop then, right? So I think her contribution to the tournament to just get that excitement about wow, look at the quality of cricket and look at the stars that we're getting to see seeing over here doing their stuff. I think shouldn't be underestimated. So yeah, great.
Yeah, and I
she
think
would have been my MVP, but then I saw that duet she did with Mark Butcher.
Yeah, I think the Indian girls did really well. The top 3 innings in the women's game were all from the Indian overseas players in Jemima Rodriguez, Smriti Mandana, and Shefali Verma. So it's got some good performances out there.
Women's IPL. Is it going to happen?
When not if. Okay, so and your men's side? Yeah, sorry, men's player.
Danny Briggs, surely.
Can't remember whether he took a wicket in the first over in any of these or not.
No,
because it wasn't over.
And I'm forbidding you from bringing that up again. Go on. Who's your men's player?
I'm going to go with a bowler from the Southern Brave, though. I think we one of the things we said at the start is anybody going to get themselves on the plane to the T20 World Cup? And okay, so Livingston has a very good tournament, but I think he was probably inked into the squad already. All he's done is just go over it a few times in Sharpie. But Timal Mills wasn't on that list, but surely he's got to be now, right? Last night bowls takes 1 for 13 in his 20. The eliminator takes 3 for 8. Right, though he's not like he's just bowling sort of the.
What do you think George Gartner will think of that then? Because he bowled pretty well over the 2 days as well.
He just got himself an IPL contract as well, George Gartner. Joining RCB.
Who is it that's bowling the death overs? Right, when it gets serious, they were turning to Mills or to Jordan. Chris Jordan, bowled very well in both those games as well. Yeah. I'm not saying that Garton didn't have a great tournament, and I'm sure his time in the international arena will come. But I think if you're gonna, if you've got to take an extra name on the plane, you're looking at Mills, surely.
Okay. Happy with those. I will go again. I will go back to my my emotional side as you will appreciate. I'm going to go with 2 players who I think gave everything to the tournament. On the women's side, I'd like to give a shout out to Sophia Dunkley. Had a great tournament with the bat, scored a lot of crucial runs. Not a great start in the tournament, but really picked it up and capping a fantastic summer. And then we saw after yesterday's final and the disappointment for her, actually she came over to where you and I were sitting at the time, Ollie, and you could just tell that she'd given everything to that game and she was absolutely in bits. And, I think she'll be back and she'll be a great star for years to come. So well done to her. And she's got nothing to be ashamed of in that sense. And the other one I've already mentioned, I think in the finals preview that we did just a couple of days ago in Rashid Khan. I think he's come over to the tournament and absolutely shown what a class act he is with his bowling, taking 12 wickets in the field with the batters required, and shown everything that we would want from the number 1 draft pick in terms of not just the cricket, but also in terms of what we want from our cricketers. So hats off, big yellow sun hat off to you, Rashid. Okay, right. Let's have some champagne moments. That's the old test match special term for the thing that you enjoyed most. Ollie, off you go.
Well, we've kind of already touched on mine because
Okay, well, keep it
it's
quick
the chin music.
Okay.
I love the fact that that Milne and March and DeLange were tearing it up. Really cranking up the speed gun. I love the fact that Lauren Bell, who kind of reminds me a bit of Curtly Ambrose, was just got that same. Is that the knees up running in?
Oh, I see. Right.
She plays bass.
Gets the knees and she's very tall, right?
Yeah.
But you want to see a bit of aggression from your quicks, and so yeah, Marizanne Cat.
Okay.
Takes no prisoners. Loved it. No. Absolutely loved it.
Right in the ear hole. Okay, Rich, your champagne moment.
I'll give you a couple, like one good, one bad. Ollie alluded it to earlier when he was talking about Headingley for that Superchargers Originals game, and the moment where Tom Lammonby not only drops a catch but spoons it over the boundary, I think for 4 or 6, right in front of the Western Terrace, and he looked like he just wanted the ground to swallow him up at that point, and it was an incredible moment. But actually,
when we had a chat with Simon Katic on the podcast, he said that they were hoping to try and keep the Western Terrace quiet. Well, that is not the way to do it. There is not going to be a stunned silence. How did he drop that response from the Western Terrace? Yeah, that's just cranking it up a few decibels if you do that kind of thing.
But I think my real one is just to tie up a few of the names mentioned in the last few minutes. The moment where you say Dunkley was playing so well, she was the key batter in that final, and Van Niekerk decides to go with multiple slips in 100 games at Lords, and Cap is bowling fast, and she gets the outside edge, and she takes Van Niekerk takes the catch at second slip. Great captaincy, incredibly bold, good execution. You get the opposition star player out, you win the cup. Champagne moment.
Happy. Yeah. And for me, I'm going to avoid going for Alex Hales being hit middle stump twice in 2 balls in a row, because that's just too much. No, I will round up my tournament highlights with the most emotional of all, the 42-year-old Imran Tahir doing a lap of Edgbaston after taking the most meaningless hat-trick of his career to date, I suspect. But no, it was just wonderful. Got me out of my chair, and again, feeling all the blood rush to my feet, I suppose, out of my wheelchair.
Can I actually give a sort of an honourable mention to Paul Sterling as well?
Yeah,
champagne moments, because I think I'm sure you won't mind me saying that I think he gives hope to club cricketers, because he's not sort of
he's not the most likely looking cricketer.
He's not the most likely looking. However, I don't know if you guys will agree, but certainly every cricket team I've ever played in has got a sort of Paul Sterling shaped sort of cricketer in it, who typically, has a irritatingly good hand-eye coordination and likes to slap the ball over cow corner, which I think, is probably, what it says at the top of Paul Sterling's CV. Bowls some tricky off spin. Actually, contributed really well with the ball this tournament. But kind of my other sort of club cricket comparison is with Benny Howell, who also sort of just looks very innocuous, and you always sort of think, why doesn't someone just slap him over cow corner? And that's exactly what Paul Sterling did. Benny Howell comes on, and first ball, I think it is, just slaps him straight into the mound stand. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, because it was sort of exactly what I would hope to happen, and it did. So yeah, I enjoyed that.
Benny Howell will be back, though. I've no doubt about it. So, what else will be back? Well, the tournament will be back. I think they've got 4 years paid up front for this thing. So the 100 will return to your screens or podcasts or your favorite YouTube channel. Do feel free to subscribe at some point next year. So what do we want from the tournament next time it comes out? And let's try and keep this concise, because there's a lot of opinion out there about it. I think we might want to let the dust settle a bit. But what might we want from the tournament next time round? And I'll just nick the obvious one straight up, because it's my question. In that I just want them to just be a little bit more considerate in the scheduling. There you go. Enough said on that. I think we've covered that one to death. Anyone else? Rich, what do you reckon?
I want better overseas stars in the men's competition.
Okay.
You prefer it not to take place during a global pandemic.
Yeah. I think we can all wish for that and world peace. Do you have any other sort of hopes?
Well, actually, I mean, I don't think that's just about the pandemic. I think it's to do with honouring contracts. Rashid Khan was the number one pick. He came over. I don't think it's necessarily about filling it with Australians. I think it's a unique window. I think what the women did, who came over from India, showed that that if you bring in the Indian stars, then that adds credibility to the tournament. I don't think it has to compete with the IPL. So the idea if you could get some of the Indian players, that would be a coup for the ECB. But also as well, I think there's fantastic cricket loving communities in the UK, not just Indians, but also Pakistani, Bangladeshi communities as well. And it would be good to see some more Pakistani and Bangladeshi players involved as well. So I think thinking a little bit harder about the overseas stars and not just guys who are already here for the Blast. Take the point about the pandemic, but I think that would really boost it. Let's elevate it.
Let's have Sandeep Lamishani back next year as well for the Nepal.
Yeah, give him a damn visa.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, one thing we could talk about is: do we want to see more? Do we want to see more teams?
No.
I'd be quite interested. I'd be quite interested to break the North versus South London stranglehold and have an East London team. Get the Olympic Stadium, nice short boundaries. Get some Bangladeshi stars over.
Yeah,
you'd get a real following.
You would.
It would be popular. Would it bring in new audiences? Yes, it would. So if that's what this tournament is about.
Are you saying that because you'd be able to walk to the stadium?
Yeah, obviously.
The serious point here is, it could expand. There are rumours out there that it might go to 10. I'd rather see it just settle in for a few years. Let's see what it does. Let's get the basic errors that are with the tournament sorted first, and then let's have a look at your ideas, Ollie.
You're passing up the chance of having a team based in Bristol called Lethal Brizzle.
Yeah, no, I am at the moment, I'm afraid.
I think the Banksy inspired logo could be awesome.
It will probably happen at some point, I suspect. But right now, I think that's prodding the wounds, as it were, of county cricket. I'd rather see them actually trying to sort it out so everyone can enjoy as much of it properly in the right sort of schedule. Okay.
One thing that made me that I enjoy it a bit more is if they agree on what the bloody colours are supposed to be. Because why were the Oval Invincibles playing in a blue cap despite their sort of greeny kit? Okay. There's a perfectly good Oval Invincibles cap out there because I spotted someone sporting it all the way down in Cornwall that matched the kit. But yeah, their playing cap was a strange royal blue. So someone in the kit department needs to sort that out for next year.
Out of all of the complaints about the 100, that
I bring something unique.
Somebody's complained about the hat colour.
That's your designer eye coming to the fore again, I'm afraid. Okay, let's talk
gold pads. You shouldn't be allowed to wear gold pads. It's like the kid that used to turn up in coloured boots when we were playing football.
I'm all for that kind of stuff. I've got no problem with the colours.
If you wear gold pads.
Okay, let's talk about us. Are we allowed to do that? What do we want to do next with the channel? So I think we're going to do some more, aren't we? Rich, got no ideas?
Well, there's no shortage of short form cricket going on. We've got the T20 Blast this week, which I'm very much looking forward to. The Caribbean Premier League starting. We've got the IPL coming up later in the year. And then we've got the T20 World Cup. I think that there's a lot of fantastic content out there covering cricket. We watch a lot of it, but sometimes the short format game doesn't get the same respect it deserves, I think. And I think there's a lot of fans who enjoy watching it, who enjoy consuming it, and are looking for people to talk about it, reflect that interest and enjoyment. So perhaps we can help fill that niche.
I think that's it. So I'm a hack. I'll turn the laptop for you anytime, and we will I'm sure be back at some point over the coming weeks. Let's talk about some of the short format stuff that's going on. We will always be, I think, keen to follow the 100, and we will hopefully be back this time next year. Right, I'll give you a closing tirade.
Yeah.
Last thoughts.
Well, let me give you one brief thing on that. In that, we talk about the Caribbean Premier League. Jake Lintott, off the back of his performance, the guy was even a professional cricketer before this tournament. He was a teacher.
Yeah.
He's now flying off to the Caribbean for 6 weeks to play in this tournament. George Garton has got an IPL contract off the back of this for Royal Challengers Bangalore. So, as we said at the beginning, people who get exposure in the 100 are going to be off playing in these different leagues. So,
yeah, well, perhaps my phone is on standby, waiting to get a call from the Caribbean Premier League to go and cover that ball.
I think we'll be doing it from here, I'm afraid, Ollie, but we will be here. So if you have been on this journey with us, we thank you so much. We've got so many subscribers, so many good comments, so many great likes and all that engagement. Thank you so much for that. And we will be back. So if you are with us for the first time, join in now. We'll be there.